I sincerely believe that what we have done in the past as a nation, overtly and covertly, is a direct reflection on the kind of people that we are. And I feel obligated to help set the record straight so that we know what we are and what are our evils, so we can divest ourselves of those evils and become, again, a great nation.
I don't want to live like a beggar for justice. I don't think it's becoming of this country. But all those lies that have been told to me and to other people, it's a very bad foundation for our society, and nothing based on lies can withstand very long.
I do not want my children or my grandchildren to grow up in a country where the people are lied to or something is covered up. The American people can handle the truth. It's been that way since the day we were born. All we need is the truth. Let's put it to rest.
Most Americans believe the truth surrounding the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy has been covered up. Marina Oswald is convinced that her late husband, Lee, played no part in his murder.
I think he's absolutely innocent of the murder of President Kennedy or Officer Tippett. And I would like for people in official capacity who say that he is guilty to come up with the proof. Absolutely, not one-sided, but all evidence on the table, and only then to decide if he's guilty or innocent. I know he's innocent, but the danger of the truth not being known will destroy this nation, actually. They maybe don't believe me, but that's the fact.
Beverly Hills is home to a former member of the 1970s House Select Committee on Assassinations, the second major inquiry into the killing of Kennedy. He resigned with others when their efforts to establish the truth were thwarted. Attorney and former mayor of Beverly Hills, Bob Tannenbaum.
The executive intelligence agencies, the FBI and the CIA, predominantly looked upon the committee as the enemy. They were not there to help us, to give us the information we needed, and made it very difficult to obtain anything. And the material they did give us was severely redacted, that is, deleted documents. And all we really wanted were the documents done by the investigators, as they would do in the ordinary course, investigating any homicide. Wherever the facts led us, we would go, and we would report on that. And as I said, if those facts told us that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated the president and he acted alone, we would have said that. If it were that Lee Harvey Oswald acted with others, we would have said it. And if it was that others killed the president and not Lee Harvey Oswald, and those were the facts, we would have said it. How did they frustrate us? They weren't interested in subpoenaing people who were critical to the investigation, and people who were subpoenaed, who were lying to the committee, who were in the government, and not doing the right thing. What was the right thing? To hold them in contempt and to charge perjury. That required a vote of the committee, a vote of the House of Representatives, and a submission to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They weren't prepared to do that because they really didn't want to find out the truth publicly. And when you have a homicide investigation, you're either involved in the truth-finding process or you get out of the business.
So the government maintains the case is closed. It's left to lone individuals to pursue the truth, and it's a long and arduous journey across a bleak landscape. One such pilgrim is now revealing previously hidden information using the latest computer technology. Tom Wilson spent 30 years with US Steel, developing his image processing techniques for revealing imperfections in product surfaces. His expert evidence in murder cases involving gunshot wounds has been accepted in federal court. In 1988, he began to apply that expertise to images from the Kennedy assassination.
You look at a picture and you see 30 shades of diversifying gray, whereas the machinery sees 256. As you peel away the layers of the photograph, as you were peeling an onion, each of the layers provides to the human being some information that lie within these various layers. And each layer or combination of layers will result in something that is embedded in there that has not been able to be brought out by the human eye. I don't think anyone has ever utilized the equipment to look at the Kennedy images, because if they have, with the expertise that I know our government has had over the past many years, then I know they will come to the same absolute conclusion that I have. And it's just been an unbelievable burden ever since, because I know that President Kennedy was assassinated by somebody from the front and that there was a conspiracy. And the problem hasn't been the burden of knowing the truth that our president was assassinated in a conspiracy. The problem has been that in my efforts to bring hard, scientific, technical information to the public has been thwarted by everywhere I have turned. I've tried the media, I've tried the government, I've tried everything I know, and no one wants to look at the evidence.
Using image processing techniques undreamt of when Zapruder filmed the assassination, Tom has uncovered dramatic information hidden within this horrific footage.
As we go further into the brain, we are able to observe all of the damage that has occurred in this rear exit wound from the very top of the skull down into where the missile exited through the head. As you can see, this is the scalp area, the damage to the skull, the area of the skull that's been blown away by the incoming frontal missile. And now we can actually go down and see the brain, and the exiting bullet has gone through the brain, and you can see the path of the bullet here. Lee Harvey Oswald did not and could not have fired the fatal shot that killed our president.
Tom Wilson's ability to extract hidden information from the assassination pictures is based on established scientific principles.
This is photonics. This is the absolute science in the measurement of light. What is in these photographs and what is measured by the computer and backed up by hard scientific mathematical data. All of my findings can be reproduced.
Badgeman shooting from the grassy knoll was first revealed in Mary Moorman's picture in The Men Who Killed Kennedy in 1988. Tom's initial work confirmed his presence. This encouraged him to apply his technology to photographic records of the assassination.
The Zapruder film allowed me to be able to go in and look at the head wound initially. The autopsy photographs allowed me to verify that there were inconsistencies within, and the pristine Mary Moorman photograph allowed me to go in and actually measure the wound optically without image processing. As we go into the wound and as we expand the wound and magnify it, you can see that the pixel elements, or each one of these little dots, is represented by dark squares or light squares. Now, if there were no wound in the rear of President Kennedy's head, all of the squares would be the basic reflective value or the basic shade of gray that his normal hair coloring would be on this day. Every time, in my years of experience with this, when there is a concave or convex area that is a deformation of the overall image, there is absolutely no question that the case is, as it goes darker under this situation, that this is going from an area on the top of President Kennedy's head down into an extremely deep hole, because the entrance wound that supported this exit wound was fired from the right frontal area of President Kennedy, and it exited through the rear. Instead of trying to find shooters or gunmen in the photographs, I decided to concentrate on President Kennedy's massive rear-end head wound. And what this enabled me to do was to be able to go in, rebuild the head wound as a mold, use the data thereof, and track back from the head wound back to the source of the shooter. This is a mold that was reproduced from the data points obtained from the pristine Mary Moorman photograph. I took 8 vertical scans, 1, 2, and so forth, down to the bottom, and 750 horizontal scans, which allowed me to have 6,000 pieces of mathematical data that I could actually turn into a 3-dimensional mold. I was able to produce the exact replica, not to scale, of course, but an exact replica of President Kennedy's head wound. As you can see, this allowed me to be able to show the massive amount of material that was blown from the head into the air. As the bullet entered the right temporal area, it came within his head and fragmented into 2 directions. The right fragment is here, the left fragment is here. And this allowed me to determine, as you can see with all the flow of forces here, that all of the material was blown up and the entrance of the fragments came from below.
Having gathered extensive mathematical data from the assassination images, Tom went to Dealey Plaza for the first time. Taking precise measurements from the site, he correlated these with his photographic findings. The results were not as he anticipated.
When I came back and took these coordinates, which were mapped out using the machinery, not manual calculations, I could never put President Kennedy at the spot where the Zapruder film said was frame 313 when Badgeman was firing, because the projectile trajectory from Badgeman wasn't where Kennedy was. And when I put President Kennedy down the road 4 feet further, when Badgeman could hit him, Mary Moorman was in the wrong location. Mr. Zapruder wasn't fit. The fence was in the wrong place. I could not make anything fit. So I had to go back to Dallas, and I had to run more tests. And what I found out was something that I had overlooked all this time in looking at the photograph. President Kennedy's wound in his right temporal area is at an angle like this. It's coming out of the ground. And I said to myself, Tom, if the bullet was coming out of the ground, how is this possible? Because I never tried to determine where the bullet came from. I only know what it did to President Kennedy's head. This totally bewildered me, but I'm at the end of this mission. President Kennedy was assassinated by a man firing a missile from inside the manhole cover at the bottom of the steps in Dealey Plaza. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that that is exactly where that headshot came from.
Jack Brazil, a seasoned researcher of the assassination, believes that a gunman firing at Kennedy from the storm sewer is no wild theory. In 1992, he put his ideas to the test with a trained military team. They explored the subterranean world beneath Dealey Plaza.
After carefully analyzing and researching Dealey Plaza through the years, the only 2 spots that an assassin could actually hide and squeeze off around at the presidential limousine would be the storm sewer that I'm standing in now and the storm drain, which is located directly behind the wooden picket fence that joins the triple underpass. But that's the only 2 spots that an assassin could hide in and actually squeeze off around and fire at the presidential limousine, and then, in lieu of that, been able to escape. It took us approximately 53 to 54 minutes, our very first trip. Now that was stopping and investigating and talking on the walkie-talkies, 2 coffee breaks, and then the second time it took 42 minutes, and the third trip it took 32 minutes, and the fourth trip it took 23 minutes. So we can rest assured that it would take an assassin approximately 20 to 30 minutes to actually escape Dealey Plaza underground. This ties in to the storm sewer in the center of Main Street, and it's easily accessible for a would-be assassin, and he could very easily have shot the president and used this route for an escape, which leads directly to the Trinity River.
The official autopsy photographs taken at Bethesda Naval Hospital on the evening of the assassination show no indication of a frontal entrance wound to Kennedy's head or exit wound from the rear. However, Tom Wilson has uncovered new evidence showing that these images have been manipulated to support the official line of a lone gunman firing from behind.
The dark areas represent material that are human and or environmental. The white areas represent mortician's materials such as wax. Some of the obvious areas of disguise are the ear, where you can see the wax material has been over top of the human ear. The entire face has been covered with mortician's wax and materials. And most important, the right temporal area, which is the entrance area of the incoming missile, has been filled with mortician's wax.
In the invasion brigade,